Alright, welcome to my February reading wrap-up. I am going to talk about books that I've already spoken about in my little Valentine's video, because a lot of these books I read the first week and a half of February. The audiobooks that I started towards the end of February, I didn't finish. And then towards the end of February, it was finally time to wrap up Gideon the Ninth. So let me just get into the video of reviewing the books that, again, like I said, some I've already talked about. But it's alright, it's fine. It's fine because I'm gonna give a little unique synopsis and review. So Ladies' Night I read as an ebook in the very beginning of February. It's when it became available, and it's not too long, so really zoomed through that. But the setting is medieval England, and the first point of view is Gwen, who is the daughter of a blacksmith, but really she is the blacksmith. So it's her dad's business, but she's the one doing the work for reasons. And she is doing it kind of secretly. People have figured it out, but the ones who have keep it hush hush because at least they have a blacksmith, because it is not technically illegal for women to work in this world, but it is very much frowned upon and you can get in trouble. But that is just kind of Gwen's origins. Her real aspiration is to be a knight. However, there is a tournament called the Tournament of the Dragon Slayer. She has to pay an entry fee to enter. Also, she's a woman. So there's a lot of complicated, I'm just gonna say complicated parts of the situation. So she can't afford the entry fee. She can get around the whole woman thing, but she can't afford the entry fee until a noblewoman, Isabel, comes and buys some of her wares. Cut to Isabel's point of view now, because it goes back and forth between their point of views. Isabel, like I said, is a noblewoman and she has a large dowry, so of course she is named as the prize for the winner of the tournament. She does not want to be the prize for the winner in the tournament, but she cannot get out of it for the life of her. So privy to Gwen's secrets, Isabel comes up with a plan to have Gwen, after she makes it through the qualifiers, go and enter the tournament disguised as a man going by the name of Gawain. You know Gawain. It's a win-win situation where Gwen gets to go after her dreams of being a knight and Isabel doesn't have to marry some man. However, it also deals with Gwen having to deal with her insecurities of not being good enough, as well as both of the women, the girls, trying to come to terms with their sexualities. It's not perfectly written by any means. It is a fun story. It is, like I said, a sapphic story, and I said this in my Valentine's video, but it kind of reminded me of A Knight's Tale with the whimsical and mix of modern and medieval setting. It's not really a modern setting, but sometimes they use modern words and that kind of stuff, which in a way made the world building kind of inconsistent, but they did it in such a charming and whimsical way that I didn't mind it so much. Like I said, I don't think it was a perfect book, don't think it was perfectly written, but for a nice easy read, I do recommend it, and I think it's really cute. Editing Lindsay here. I do want to add, because I keep saying it's fun and whimsical, and it is at its core, but I don't want to be misleading. There are some dark themes, so I felt it important for me to add that in there, even though at the core of this story and for the majority of the story, it is very fun and whimsical. Next is my week with him. I said this as well in the Valentine's video. I listened to it as an audiobook in a day. It's not very long and it's YA, but let me get into what it's about. So this book follows Nikki, who is in her senior year of high school, and she aspires to be a singer, and she does get invited to audition for a girl group. It happens to all of us. I'm still waiting for my invitation, but I know it's gonna come. Anyway, Nikki has to go audition in secret because she has a rough relationship with her mother, and she knows her mother would not approve of her going to this audition. But when Nikki and her little sister get into a little bit of a sibling tiff, Nikki's little sister tells her mom about the audition, and then Nikki gets kicked out of the house, going to live with her best friend Malachi, or going to stay with him, hence my week with him. I did like this book. It might be a bit too YA for me, and if you're looking for a build-up in a relationship, the yearning and tension and all that kind of stuff, this book doesn't really have that. It's more just friends knowing they have feelings for each other, kind of sorting out how to go from that friendship to the relationship, sorting out the difference between being close friends and being partners, and the difference in love that you feel. Is there really that much of a difference? How do you kind of navigate that? I don't know, I thought it was even more so an exploration of complicated family dynamics with also romance kind of in the subplot. Even though it is very much marketed as a romance, I feel like the romance takes a back burner at times. I think it's more of a coming of age and an exploration of family dynamics. Next I have Check and Mate. This is, you know, another Ali Hazelwood. I've only read 2 so far, including Check and Mate. This story is about Mallory. She was a child chess prodigy that she wasn't ever allowed to compete at the professional level, but she did end up kind of giving up chess when she was 14 due to life-changing events that happened to her and her family. Now she's 18, fresh out of high school, has taken on a lot of responsibility, taking care of her chronically ill mom, her 2 younger sisters, and a guinea pig that one of her younger sisters stole. So she's become the head of her house while her friends are heading off to university, and so she's instead taking on this responsibility, and she also has to find a new job because she got fired from her job at a mechanics where her boss was sexist and horrible and scummy and yucky. Thankfully, prior to getting fired, her best friend begged her to do this charity chess competition, and at that competition she of course played the #1 player in the world and beat him. The #1 player in the world being Nolan Sawyer, a 20-year-old also chess prodigy that is known for being moody and attractive. So Ali Hazelwood is definitely one of the few writers of heterosexual romance or heterosexual passing relationships Mallory is by, but she writes them and the men especially in a way that doesn't bother me. It's not super heteronormative. Like in The Love Hypothesis, that was, I want to say, one of the issues that I had with the book. It was a bit more heteronormative and I didn't like the handling of like the sexuality of the protagonist and that kind of stuff. This one does a little bit better and I really was kind of pulled into this book. It is definitely when Ali Hazelwood was kind of like sticking to what she knew of like women in STEM and academia and that kind of stuff. I don't know chess, but I was emotionally invested in this chess world, kind of acting like I do know chess. Like, why would you move your knight to d3? That's so stupid. I obviously know what that means, but for real, it was a really sweet story and I enjoyed it. It is YA, so easy read, very cute. Also kind of a coming of age and family stuff, but I think the romance was a bit more heavy in this and it is more of like you're gonna get the building up to it. Okay, another audiobook I listened to was Second Tides the Charm. It's just gonna call it by the saying. This book starts off following Hope Evans, who is a marine biologist who has a deep love for sharks. This is a very pro-shark book, yay hooray. But Hope hasn't worked with sharks in a while because she moved back home to Michigan to help her friend after her friend's husband passed. She needed to help her friend, or she elected to help her friend with her family and her business. However, at this point, her friend is pushing her to get back into marine biology and do what she loves and work with sharks. But to do so, Hope takes a job working on a boat or working on a research boat. I don't know marine biology, but she has to work with her ex. So it then switches to her ex Adrian's point of view. It does also alternate each chapter. Adrian is also a marine biologist, of course, and while he's working on this research boat, he has also, since she has last seen him, become successful in having a YouTube channel where he kind of dispels the myths around sharks and teaches actual facts with the sharks. And because Hope is working with him on this research boat, the YouTube channel is also kind of part of the work that she gets involved in. But while they're navigating working together and their dynamic, we learn more about their past and like Hope's aspirations, which very much focused on her marine biology. She really never planned on love until she met Adrian, and she, as I said, she has these lofty career goals, as does Adrian, and she kind of was worried about one or both of them having to give up their dreams and their goals in order to be in a relationship. So it is navigating those complicated feelings that she has. That aside, they really need to focus on working together. How can they work together when they have this history, and kind of navigating their feelings, figuring out how they feel when they were in this like deeply loving yet kind of closed off relationship. It's very complicated, but it does make for an exploration into one's feelings, their desires, and how to balance wanting multiple things in life. This book has Insta-lust. When I reviewed books before, I have said I don't like Insta-lust, and I stand by that. I really, really don't. It makes a little bit more sense when it is a reconnection story because they already have a history. They're attracted to each other. They dated for years in this book. So that didn't bother me as much. It didn't really have the tension, and it kind of had the yearning, but not as much. It was, like I said, more of an exploration into what do you truly want? How are you going to balance that kind of thing? It was a cute story. Sometimes it had plot points that felt kind of random, but nothing too wild, just kind of like, hey, what? It wasn't even that much, hey, what? It wasn't, like I said, anything too wild, just a couple points of, is this super relevant? But it was also just a cute story. It wasn't, a lot of these books I have talked about so far, I think pretty much every book I've talked about so far is kind of a more easy read. We've had 2 YAs I've talked about, and just, honestly, Ladies' Night might be YA, I have to look that up. But they're not the most nuanced or complex stories, which is kind of what, especially beginning of February, I was really looking for. I wanted to read cute stories to kind of lead up to Valentine's Day. And kind of, I've been in a reading slump. Help me get out of that reading slump. You know how it is. Okay, finally. I can finally talk about Gideon the Ninth, the Locked Tomb book, the first book of the Locked Tomb series. I don't actually know how long the series is. I've only read the first book. Gideon. She lives a life of servitude in the 9th house, and she hates it. She wants so desperately to leave, to be free of this place full of skeletons and mean nuns and a necromancer girl. She is the daughter of the ruling family, Harrowhark, a necromancer, and she is Gideon's enemy. They hate each other. They like really hate each other, like fight to the death, hate each other. So as I said, Gideon wants nothing more than to be free, but for some reason her plans keep being thwarted and she cannot get off this 9th house. She cannot get away from it. She keeps trying and it's not happening. So things kind of change for Gideon when Harrowhark gets invited by the Emperor to go to the first house to kind of compete in this trial, I guess is a way to word that, to become one of the Emperor's like immortal necromancers, immortal servants as a necromancer. And she gets to bring with her a cavalier. Each house gets to bring a necromancer and a cavalier. The issue is Harrowhark is down a cavalier, and while they are normally trained, while they're normally trained from a very young age, Gideon's like really skilled with a long sword, and that's not the same as what a cavalier uses, but she's able to be whipped into shape to be taken with Harrowhark to the first house to be a part of this trial and all the tribulations that come with it. So as for my review, at first, I'll be so honest, I was unsure. I'm not the biggest sci-fi person. This is definitely more sci-fi than fantasy, and I typically do like dystopian novels. I read one a couple years ago though, a series that kind of put me off from dystopian for a little bit. This got me back into it. So as I said, it took me a minute to get into it, hence why it took 3 months to read. I took a couple of breaks. I ended up loving it. I really did. I loved the world. I loved the sense of humor. The characters were intriguing. The world, as I said, I loved it. It really sucked me in. Like one of those books where you feel like you're really in the world. I liked how the reveals were done, the foreshadowing, but I will say a huge thing for me was the sense of humor. I think that is very unique to this book and probably the series as well, is the sense of humor used. Yes, of course, the story and the world themselves are unique, but I think the sense of humor gives it its own little kind of edge, because I see a lot of people online talking about this series. I think for a lot of people it becomes their favorite or their comfort series, however you want to put it. Though it is kind of a dark story, I definitely understand why people latch onto this because of the sense of humor, because it is sapphic, and so there's definitely a ton of sapphic stories out there, but not super popular. I mean, people are complaining about Francesca in Bridgerton, about Michael being Michaela now, which they're like, oh, that erases her relationship with John. Obviously, she very, very much loved John, and I think was in love with John, so like I don't recall it being confirmed that she is a lesbian. she can like both men and women. They're all different. The sexuality is a spectrum. I'm just gonna put that out there. We're like, I don't know. And it's so interesting that people are so mad about it, but they weren't mad about Benedict sleeping with men. And it just feels like, I don't know. You can't love something like Heated Rivalry and then be mad when there's a woman loving woman story in Bridgerton. It's a little bit telling. That was tangential and a tangent I didn't mean to go on, but like I said, I understand why this is super popular and all the elements that come together, and I definitely plan on reading the next book. I just don't have it, and the library doesn't have it right now, so I'll either wait for the library to get it back or see if I can get my hands on it. But the next one is Harrow the Ninth. I see that on the back now. Like I said, really enjoyed this book. Highly recommend if you are especially into like dystopian and sci-fi and that kind of stuff, and lesbian necromancers. There's a lot of swordplay as well. I've said that in like all my reviews, but it's true. It says it on the book, but it lives up to that. Other than that, I DNF'd a tennis book that was weirdly religious. I really don't even want to like talk about it. I looked up the author and he's like weirdly religious. Like he's like progressive in some ways, but also weirdly like kind of seems conspiracy theorist. I don't know. I'm the least religious person you'll probably ever meet. We have not met. Let's not be parasocial. So I probably should have worded that differently, but you get the point. I am not religious at all. I can consume things with religion and like be fine. I love the Narnia films, but this one was just weird. It was just weird, like good versus evil in tennis, and like the other things that the author has written. I was like, I'm gonna distance myself from this and not really like, I'm mentioning it but not giving it a ton of attention and even telling you what it is, who wrote it. I mean, of course, you can use your own judgment for these kind of things if you come across this book. It's just like it wasn't Challengers, obviously. Not even close to Challengers. And it's like, what is the point? Why make a tennis story if it's not gonna be Challengers? I don't think I'll ever understand. But that is all I have for my February reading wrap up. I hope you liked this. Stay tuned for some exciting videos to come, and I'm really excited for what I have to read in March. I also started Happy Place, but I did not finish it. I was a little chaotic because I have 2 books available, or one about to be available on my library app, and I get sidetracked by that because you only have a certain amount of time to read it. The books I own. Anyway, if you like this, like and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye!